Tamaki Tsuru has been a driven young girl who has dedicated her life to excelling at sports throughout high school. But things change once she arrives at college. With her heart set on a different mission to find her soulmate, she puts sports on the back burner. However, fate has different plans for her as unexpected circumstances lead to her being enlisted in the university's glider club. Tamaki is driving to the airport where will catch a flight to the big city of Tokyo with her mother, where she will be moving to college. As the optimistic smile on her face indicates, she has high hopes for what the future holds. She gets to campus where the cherry blossoms are still blooming. It's spring and the campus is hustling and bustling with eager students. Glad to finally be at her dream university, Tamaki decides this is the place where she will find her one, true love. Luckily, she finds herself in a friendly match of tennis with a charming guy. But she gets distracted for a moment and hits the ball so aggressively that it knocks down the university campus that was standing nearby. The mascot falls and breaks the wing of a plane that the glider club had just brought there. When the guy under the mascot suit angrily demands money for the loss, the charming tennis player runs off and abandons Tamaki. When the guy in the mascot costume tells Tamaki that she owes several million yen, she passes out in panic. Looks like her university life is doomed, to begin with. In a flashback, Tamaki's younger self is shown when she was in her high school's volleyball club. Even though she enjoyed it, she overheard a conversation between her classmates who were mocking her and it broke her heart. The scene switches to Tamaki's cold, heartless father degrading and dismissing her when she was just a kid. Upset by the traumatizing memories, Tamaki regains consciousness. She wakes on a couch in an apartment she has never been to before. She begins to notice the plain posters on the wall when she overhears two guys approaching her. Kuramochi, who is the president of the glider, introduces himself and his friend who was in the mascot costume earlier, called Sorachi Daisuke. The guys tell her that they are the university's aviation club. Kuramochi is very gentle and pleasant towards her while Sorachi is hot-headed yet passionate about aviation. Kuramochi asks Tamaki to join their club and show up at the tryout meeting. Later that night, Tamaki is back in her room. After a failed attempt to borrow money from her mother, she goes to sleep, defeated. The next morning, she shows to the location which is in a field. Drowsy and contemplating her decision to show up, she sees a magnificent glider in the air and follows it with wonder. She watches Kuramochi flying the glider with such ease and splendor. Meanwhile, Sorachi spots her from a distance. He nags at her for being late, hands her a dirty costume to change into, and warns her about doing no funny business as this club is very serious. Irritated by his rude behavior, Tamaki decides that she is going to give the same treatment to him. She shows up in uniform and asks him for his next order. Kuramochi lands the plane and looks at her amusement as she argues with Sorachi. The next morning, he tells her that she will be joining him on the next plane ride, which is equally surprising to both Tamaki and Sorachi. Nevertheless, Sorachi asks her for her weight to make arrangements for the plane to be balanced. When she reveals how much she weighs, he calls her fat and gets called a midget in response. Kuramochi seats Tamaki in the front seat while he sits in the back of the plane. He teaches her about how the flying process works and they leave for the sky. Even though Tamaki is scared at first, once the plane detaches and flies steadily, Tamaki can't help but look at the clear blue sky around her and appreciate how beautiful it looks. Kuramochi observes the wind pattern and tells Tamaki that they are going to catch the blue thermal. He explains that it is a wind current that would make their ride very enjoyable if they catch it. Down on the ground, members of the aviation club wonder what Kuramochi is trying to do as he flies in a lazy 8, which is a complex flying technique. Sorachi sits in a corner, disheartened because he didn't get to fly with Kuramochi. The plane lands smoothly and Tamaki steps out of it. She looks at her shaking hands but enjoys the feeling of exhilaration coursing through her body. Kuramochi congratulates her newfound excitement and tells her to get off the runway as it isn't safe. Tamaki tells her that she'd have to decline the offer to join this club. When he asks her the reason, she blurts out "love" as her answer, immediately turning red in embarrassment. Kuramochi laughs and asks her if she really wants to fall in love. Tamaki explains how she wants a typical university life with a boyfriend and friends she shares common interests with. She tells him she'd pay the money back by working part-time jobs. In response, Kuramochi tells her that if she wins the aviation contest, she can pay the prize money of 3 million yen back to the club immediately. As for love, he orders Sorachi to go out with her and he agrees in annoyance, out of respect for Kuramochi. Sorachi takes to the doctor to get the medical exam for clearance for her to be in the aviation club. He gives her the doctor's bill that she would have to pay back later along with a pile of books she needs to study from as part of her training. Her training begins after she finally gets her practice permit. Along with the other recruits, she meets Nanba, who will be leading the practice. Kuramochi motivates them and tells them about the club's ambitions of winning the association championship, and then the nationals. During practice, Tamaki befriends two new members and discovers that Kuromochi is one of the very few students who are also instructors at their clubs. After hearing that, she walks up to him and asks if she could fly with him once more. Kuromochi agrees and they start flying. Kuromochi notices that Tamaki can estimate her altitude in the sky, which appears to be a special ability. He changes his mind and decides to have a hand at the controls. When the plane lands, Tamaki heads towards her other Year 1 friends who are going to get lunch. Sorachi holds her back and puts her in her place. She leaves immediately while he feels bad about how rude he was. Later on that day, some seniors shout at Tamaki for misplacing a screwdriver. They scold her on how her irresponsibility could cost someone their life while flying. At night, all the members of the club look for the screwdriver while Tamaki tears up, wondering how things got so messed up. Sorachi approaches her and hands her a flashlight to help her look better in the dark. He crouches down on the ground near her looking for the screwdriver and apologizes for his harsh behavior from earlier that day. She confides in him about how she always messes everything up and maybe that is the reason why she isn't accepted or wanted anywhere. As tears begin to roll down her cheeks, Sorachi promises to support her no matter what and requests her not to quit. As she bows down to thank him, she finds the screwdriver and runs off to inform others, leaving him behind in frustration due to her antics. The next morning, Tamaki wakes everyone up and thanks Sorachi once again for motivating her. After the training camp is over, Tamaki finds out about how popular aviation clubs are and how Kuromochi is one of the very best gliders. She steps out to find him sitting alone and compliments him on his remarkable skills. She also lets him know that she will do her best in this club, which brings a smile to his face. The next day, Kuromochi is in a meeting with what appears to be an investor who gives him instructions for finding a replacement for himself. On the other hand, Tamaki and her other first-year peers get to Naganuma under Nanba's leadership, where they will practice matches against other universities. Aonagi's aviation club meets the other university's club at the runway where their leader points Tamaki out and inquires what she's doing there. When the other club leader removes her glasses, Tamaki looks at her in surprise as she recognizes her. She is Yano, Tamaki's older sister, which surprises everyone. Kuromochi joins the group and Yano asks him the reason why he let her join the club. Both Kuromochi and Sorachi try to defend Tamaki, but Yano declares that her club won't be competing with them as long as Tamaki is in Aonagi's aviation club. Yano then walks away from the scene, leaving Tamaki humiliated and conflicted at the same time. After that, Tamaki tells her group about how her parents got divorced, which led to her and Yona being split up. They had stayed apart throughout all these years as Tamaki lived with her mother while Yona stayed with their father. Sorachi points out that this still doesn't justify the way Yona treated her. Tamaki elaborates that they have bad history between them due to past events. So Kuromochi tells her that she can be excused from joining the meeting if she wants. Nevertheless, she is present at the meeting where Kuromochi explains the route and rules for the competition. In this match, only the top 3 gliders of both clubs will be competing, including Nanba, Kuromochi, and Yona. Yona comes back to target Tamaki, but Kuromochi stands up for her and announces that she could win the national championship after he's done training her. Then he sends Yona off while Tamaki listens quietly. She thanks Kuromochi for defending her before he dismisses the members of Aonagi. The competition between Aonagi and Hanakan begins the next morning when Kuromochi makes the decision of flying in a 2-seater with Tamaki, which would not work in his favor. Even his competitor Yona protests, but he sticks to his intuition. Machida, who is part of the Aonagi team, lands and begins to throw up, complaining about it is very difficult to thermal in this region. As Sorachi assists her, he can't help but worry about Tamaki, who is still in the sky. To his dismay, the plane she is in is nowhere to be seen, which is not the typical behavior of Kuromochi, who usually makes it back to the runway with time to spare. 2 hours later, he spots the plane returning towards the runway and smiles in relief. When the plane finally lands, Kuromochi steps out to talk to Nanba while Tamaki goes to Sorachi and tells him how the flight was like a dream where she flew above the clouds and the mountain peaks. Sorachi is about to question how far she went when she collapses in her phased state. Sorachi sits beside a sleeping Tamaki when Kuromochi enters the room. Sorachi gets mad at him for putting Tamaki at risk and gets emotional about how Tamaki could have been seriously harmed. Shocked at his unusual behavior or disrespecting Kuromochi for the first time ever, he apologizes and runs away. That night, Yona studies Kuromochi's flight pattern and learns that only someone with a lot of experience in mountain gliding can cover the large distance he did in such a short amount of time. Tamaki wakes up and finds Kuromochi sleeping outside her room. She leaves through the other entrance where Sorachi had been sitting in deep sleep. He wakes up to see her running off and follows her outside. He hands her his jacket and tags along to join her for a walk. They enjoy the view of a beautiful sunrise filled with clouds and sunlight while Kuramochi wakes up and tries to find Tamaki at the hotel. He sees her and Sorachi walking back and smiles. At breakfast, he tells her to rest and stay back in her room. In no time, their 5-day-long training camp has drawn up to its end as Tamaki looks at her low contributions and performance. Yona tells Tamaki that they will meet at the rookie competition next, which Tamaki knows nothing about. Back at the university, Tamaki shows interest in the rookie competition to win the prize money. Due to this, her first-year friends run to Kuramochi and Nanba, who had just been requesting Sorachi to not give up on the club, especially when he is so close to competing in the rookie competition. He responds that he has made the decision when they are interrupted by the students. Tamaki's friends find out that the cost of the loss caused by Tamaki has already been covered by insurance. Kuramochi tells everyone to keep this a secret to keep Tamaki focused and commands Sorachi to postpone his decision until the rookie competition so that he can take care of Tamaki during this time. The next morning, with Sorachi's help and Kuramochi's guidance, Tamaki takes her first flight alone successfully. Fast forward to the day before the rookie competition, Tamaki and the group arrive at Kisagawa. Sorachi tells her that she can do a practice run since she has never flown before in this location. She is following him when she sees a contestant's jersey lying on the floor. She goes to Kuramochi, who is discussing some matters with the director of Kisagawa with Yona. He asks her about her practice run, which she hasn't taken yet. Yona criticizes her again for not doing the obvious thing and advises Kuramochi to keep his expectations low with Tamaki because she is bound to disappoint him. When Sorachi gets to know about her not taking a practice run, he shows some concern as well but doesn't get harsh with it. Tamaki finds herself in regret of missing out on the practice run, but when she sees the happiness of Satu, a fellow participant who lost her jersey, she feels happy with herself and goes to sleep with a smile on her face. On the day of the competition, Haninkan University's Hattori is also competing, who is the young person to get a license. He makes fun of the lack of talent at Aonoji University and mocks Tamaki's confidence to not take a trial run a day earlier. He seems pretty confident that he will perform best in this competition. After he leaves, Sorachi tells Tamaki to ignore him and just do what she always does. Meanwhile, Kuramochi has a discussion with Yona about how Tamaki is the best candidate at Aonoji because the first time she piloted, even though she didn't have any idea about the theory, she had a strong sense of estimating the winds and was a natural at it. This causes Yona to despise her younger sister even more, as she would overshadow her in a hobby that was all Yona's. Yona tells Kuramochi that her team is well prepared and they would win. When Tamaki begins to fly in the competition, she realizes that her altitude is low and finds herself confused because there are no clouds. Down on the ground, Sorachi is concerned and Hattori points out that she won't be able to thermal because there is no landmark. Nevertheless, Tamaki goes with her gut and begins to thermal by catching a wind current on the right. She regains a high altitude, which everyone finds impressive, and she wins first place for the day, making Hattori jealous as won second place. At night, when the results are being distributed, Hattori isn't present, which would lead to his direct disqualification. Tamaki runs off to search for him. He is resentful for losing to her and gets angry when he sees her. But Tamaki uses her bubbly personality to win him over and brings him back to keep his qualification. Yona watches them befriending each other from a corner, sulking. On the second day of the competition, Kuramochi will be flying with Hattori as his judge while Tamaki gets Yona as her judge. Yona ignores her and acts as if she doesn't know her. Kuramochi gives his sunglasses to Tamaki and tells her to have a good time on her flight. Hattori and Tamaki begin to fly and Hattori gives her a really hard time, but Tamaki trusts her instinct and makes a bold move that plays off. They are still in the middle of flying when Yona comments on she hasn't changed one bit. The match is cut short because of unexpected rain. In the next days, Yona silently observes Tamaki from a distance as she befriends all of her fellow contestants. When Kuramochi talks with Yona, she recalls her childhood. She tells him that her mother died after giving birth, and Tamaki was the half-sister she got after her father remarried. She confesses how she had always been envious of Tamaki because of how innocent and friendly she was with everyone, and how Yona couldn't be that carefree because she had to be the well-mannered child for her father because he saw traces of Yona's mother in her and had greater expectations from her. She admits that running into Tamaki after all these years brought these bitter memories back to her and she hates herself now. At the end of the rookie competition, Hattori wins first place while Tamaki is the runner-up. Yona congratulates her and makes up with her, admitting how impressive she has been. They all get back to their universities, looking forward to meeting the next spring. Fall approaches and Tamaki finds herself struggling in academics and social life because she had spent all her time in the glider club instead of studying and living the experience she initially aimed for. She is eating her lunch in the cafeteria one day when her first-year friends from the glider club break the news of Sorachi leaving the club to her. They all go to him to confirm if the news is true. He tells them that he had been planning to leave the club for a while because he wants to be a professional pilot and will pursue aeronautics at the university from now on, so he won't have time for training camps anymore. Once he leaves, Tamaki's friend urges her to choose between Kuramochi and Sorachi, who both obviously like her. At the same time, Kuramochi steps out from the hospital where he had been to visit his mother. On his walk back home, he thinks about his sponsor who has made arrangements for him to leave for Germany and compete internationally from now onwards. Back at the university, Tamaki and her friends discover that Kuramochi has left the university. They try to contact him but his number is no longer in service. The first-year students are sad about how they have lost both Kuramochi and Sorachi from their club at once and how empty the Aoniji Aviation Club feels without the two guys. Meanwhile, Tamaki lands from her flight where she was unable to catch any thermal. It looks like she has lost her mojo without the support of her two greatest friends. Nanba assures her that it's just a bad day and to not worry too much about it when he sees the sponsor, Asahina's car driving towards them. He gets out of the car and takes a seat while informing Nanba that he is here to overlook Aoniji Aviation Club because Kuramochi asked him to. Tamaki hears this and introduces herself to him to get information about Kuramochi's whereabouts. He replies by criticizing her useless flight and tells her that if Aoniji relies on Kuramochi to win the national then the club isn't worth it for him to invest in. That is why he is here today to observe them and decide accordingly. He also lets her know that Kuramochi has been sent to Germany now. He proceeds to ask her if she loves Kuramochi, which she denies, and calls him out on his injustice towards Kuramochi. He explains that when Kuramochi bought the discus glider for Aoniji, he became indebted to Asahina. So he could send him off wherever he wants. The only condition under which Kuramochi could have ended the contract was to find a replacement for himself, which he wasn't able to do. To everyone's surprise, Tamaki offers to become Kuramochi's replacement. She makes a deal with Asahina where if she wins the nationals and proves to be as good or better than Kuramochi, Asahina will support both her and Kuramochi. Asahina gets in his car and calls Kuramochi to update him about the situation and explains that he played the villain so that the club gets some drive and motivation to prove themselves. Later on, Tamaki gets a call from Kuramochi who apologizes for his selfishness and Asahina's behavior. Tamaki starts complaining about why did he leave so abruptly. In response, he assures her that he is doing fine and hangs up on her. It is now time for the next competition where Sorachi has returned on Nanba's request to support the Aoniji Glider Club. The first-year students cheer up after seeing him but get angry when they hear the other contestants looking down upon Aoniji since Kuramochi is no longer with them. Hattori walks up to them and shouts a comeback to the rude Onma contestants on Aoniji's behalf as a gesture of his friendship with Tamaki. She thanks him and expresses how her aim is for Aoniji to get first place because there is no possible way she could tell Kuramochi they lost. While the competition takes place, Kuramochi gets a call from the hospital in Germany informing him about his mother's death. He breaks down as he hears the devastating news. Back at Aoniji, Asahina visits the club members while Tamaki is still flying as she had been performing well. One of her friends overhears Asahina on the call talking about Kuramochi's glider crashing and his body is still missing. When Asahina breaks the news to everyone, Tamaki refuses to give up and Nanba and Sorachi join in too. It begins to rain and the matches get postponed, which means that Aoniji might end up in the second position. Sorachi observes Tamaki standing in the rain alone, holding Kuramochi's sunglasses, missing him. The next morning, she wakes up with her eyes swollen due to all the crying she did last night. The group decides to let Tamaki fly as she is the only one who can turn things around in just one flight. Sorachi decides to take the first flight and performs well, but the other teams stay in the lead. Tamaki gets prepared for the second flight and promises that she would fly with all her strength and have as much fun as she can, just like Kuramochi always told her to. While flying, she reminisces about the times she flew with Kuramochi and catches up with the other teams. Aoniji wins and everyone cheers in celebration. As soon as she lands, Tamaki insists that Asahina fly her to Germany to look for Kuramochi. When she gets there, she flies in the clear skies and catches a blue thermal to enjoy, just like Kuramochi taught her. As her plane flies off course over Germany's markets, Kuramochi notices it and runs off to talk to her. Tamaki is still flying when she hears Kuramochi's voice asking for a position report. Tears of relief welling up in her eyes, she demands that he promises to stay with her forever from now. He agrees, waiting for her to land so they could be together once and for all.